And then last night, I finished Fury and Light by Chris Stewart. This is the fourth book, 4 out of 6, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saint based book on the last days. The Great and Terrible series, the series basically of the final war between good and evil. So, where we ended, our awesome General Neil Brighton had passed away with a nuclear bomb that had destroyed Washington, D.C. And Sam doesn't know if his family is alive or dead. He doesn't know if his mom and his brothers were killed also in that blast. He doesn't know if his dad was actually dead or not. But the United States is calling all of its soldiers home. So Sam and Bono are getting ready to head home. Azada is settling in with Mary Dupre and her very sick daughter, Kelly Beth. And she is preparing to leave with Kelly Beth. Azada, unfortunately, has to be by herself for a little bit because they don't have the funds to take Azada with them. So Azada's going to be by herself for a couple of days in the small apartment. Mary goes over what she needs to know and everything, and then she takes Kelly to the doctor, which is, they have to spend the night. So it's far enough away that they have to spend the night. Southern Illinois type area. So Sarah Brighton and Ammon and Luke they go back home after the blast. They leave a note for Sam, and then they head out to Salt Lake City. They really feel like they need to get to Salt Lake City. Sarah says in her note to Sam that she gets a strong feeling that they're not going to make it to Salt Lake City, but that is where they're headed, for lack of better instructions, when he gets home, if he gets home. In the background, there's Prince Saeed making evil plans, basically taking out any and all of his relatives that do not agree with his plan, that will not go with him. The oldest stands up, he shoots him the minute he starts to protest. So anybody that doesn't go with him, he's killing, basically. Because he has 2 ships, one on each coast of the United States, and each of them have 2 EMP bombs that they're going to release to the United States. One going north, one going west, and they're gonna detonate over the United States, far enough over to basically cover all of the United States. From Canada, a little into Canada to a little into Mexico. And they take those bombs and they detonate them. So now the United States, I should say, has been thrust into a day prior to electricity. So no working cell phones, no working digital watches, no working vehicles. Everyone's vehicles stalled and stopped. Planes that have electric ignition, those come down. No electricity at all. Sarah and Ammon and Luke get stuck just southeast of Chicago. They were going to drive past, but Sarah, as the vehicle was still working before the bombs went off, strongly indicated that Luke turn onto 165 heading into Chicago. So he does, and just as he turns onto that road is when the EMP hits, and so they get stuck. They meet up with Mary Dupre and Kelly Beth, who is freaking out because her daughter needs her meds, and Azada is left all alone. So they decide to take her under their wing. They just feel like they need to. So they feel like they need to connect with her and take her under the wing. And they basically do. They're making a plan to walk into Chicago. And then they notice some hoodlums trying to rob their car. And so Sarah and Mary go over there to confront the men. And they start making lewd comments and everything, and start being really aggressive. They slap Sarah. and then Ammon and Luke basically come in and wrestle them to the ground and everything, and beat them, and um, they let them live though. And then later, as they're making plans, they find out that they can't get into Chicago because these guys and a few of their buddies are guarding the bridge and making anybody pay who wants to cross, or basically, they can get violent as well. So they're trying to figure out how to get into Chicago, hoping that the guys will just give up and get bored of their game or whatnot. So that's where they're at. Sam has made it back to the United States. Sam and Bono, they've made it back to the United States before the EMPs went off. They were on a train heading back because Bono decided to go with Sam to see if Sam can find out what happened to his family. So they're on a subway train underground going to Sam's old house. Bono is holding off on going to see his family until he makes sure that Sam knows what he's doing, despite Sam's protests. So the EMP goes off while they're on the train. Train comes to a stop. So they end up getting to the next station by walking against the orders of those, the train, what's engineer, that's what they're called. And they make it up top. They realize that it was an EMP that hit, and they realize that basically nothing's going to work unless it was covered underground far enough, or unless it was built before 1980, I think, is what the time period was. So they eventually make it to Sam's house. They find the note that Sarah left Sam. So he has a good idea of where he's going, but he has no idea where they got and how far they got to. And in the note, he does find out that Neil, his father, adopted father, did not make it. So he also found out that Sarah and the boys had just had this message from God telling them to just go, get out. And that is why they were saved, because they all had appointments in Washington, D.C. that would have killed them if they had been there. So Sam and Bono make a plan to get to the nearest military station. And they get there and they convince somebody to fly them over to one of the other ones, the bigger hubs that have the helicopters that are able to work still. They convince them to get them over there. And Bono finds a helicopter ride to, or close enough to he can get home to his family. I think they were in Tennessee. And then Sam's looking at the thing because he's like, I don't know where my family is. And he's looking at a map, hoping maybe for revelation. And this gentleman comes in and says, "You're the one looking for his family, right?" And Sam's like, "Well, yeah, who are you? Did Bono send you?" He's like, "Bono? I don't know Bono." And then he says, "Listen to me, Sam. You need to go to Chicago. You need to go to Chicago, and you need to save them all." So Sam knows where he's got to go. He's got a destination now. He tells Bono this when Bono comes to tell him that he got a ride. And Bono's like, "You don't know if that's where your family is or anything." And then there's silence for like 10 seconds as Bono listens to something. And then something's like, "You're right. You need to go to Chicago." So Bono leaves on his plane. Sam gets away out to Chicago like 16 hours later. Maybe it was only 8 hours. The time, I'm not certain on the time on that. Where he's basically going on a refueling plane, and he's going to jump out over Chicago area. So he does. He jumps out about 20 miles southeast of Chicago. Sarah, Ammon, and Luke are like 16 miles, so they're not that far apart. He doesn't know this, but along the way, as he's running towards wherever the spirit guides him, he sees a car with a BYU sticker in it, and he kind of knocks on the window and is like, "Is anybody there?" And this guy pops up. He's like, "This isn't my car." And he's like, because he's asking him, he's like, "Are you a member of the church?" And he's like, "This isn't my car. I'm not a member of the church, but I did work with them in med school, and they were pretty good guys." And he's like, "You're a doctor?" And he's like, "Well, no, I'm a med student." And he's like, do you have a black bag? Are you close enough to the doctor? And he's like, yeah. And so Sam's like, follow me. And he's like, where are we going? He's like, I don't know. So they, they're just running together. In the meantime, those guys notice that Ammon and Luke are watching them from off the side, and they recognize them as the ones who beat them up, and they decide they're going to go teach them a lesson. So they go. They find out where they're at, and they pull a gun on them, and they're aiming it at Ammon. And there's a scene where Balaam and Satan are whispering in the guy's ear, just shoot this guy, just shoot him. And he's hesitating to pull the trigger. He pulls the trigger once, though, as Luke jumps in the way of his mom. He goes to pull the trigger on his mom, and Luke gets shot. Ammon is almost going to get shot, but then Mary, who decided to play like she fainted, stood up and whacked him with a tire iron, knocked him out cold. And the other guy basically took off. So Sarah is cradling Luke, who's been shot and is pale and ashen and in shock. And Ammon is in shock as well from his brother's state. And Mary's kind of trying to get through to him like, Ammon, listen, you need to find a first aid kit. Where's your first aid kit? He's like, I don't know. She's like, we have to look for it. So they go to start looking for it. And then they notice that there's somebody near their campsite, and it ends up being Sam. And Sarah notices that it's Sam, and she goes and she runs and hugs him. And basically a really sweet family reunion. And Sam calls the doctor over, and he calls him over to assess Luke. And he's like, is he going to make it? Can we get him to a hospital in Chicago? And he's like, you can't move him. We can't move him without causing more injury. He's, his chances of survival are definitely going to dwindle into the single digits percentages if you move him before I can even stabilize him. And he's like, he lost a lot of blood. He's probably going to need a transfusion. And Ammon's like, well, I'm a perfect match. I can give him a transfusion. He's like, I can jerry-rig something. And Sam's like, what are his chances of survival? And the doctor's like, I can't give you that. Like, this is something I can't give you. I'm like, less than 50-50 is what I'm saying. So Sarah tells Sam, she's like, he needs a blessing. Now in the church, blessings are usually given by Melchizedek priesthood holders. But it's mostly based on the faith of the person receiving the blessing. Basically, it is a personal call to God for extra support and help and healing. And Ammon's like, I can't give a blessing because I don't have the Melchizedek priesthood. And Sam's like, I have it, I can give it. Although I'm fairly certain that a blessing can be given, maybe not officially, like anointing oil and stuff like that, but I believe a blessing can be given. It looks different and it's not quite like official, but it can be given. But that wasn't what was done in this book. So Sam had the Melchizedek priesthood, and he was able to give Luke a blessing. And then Mary's like, well, can you give my daughter a blessing? And he hears, the Spirit whisper to him that, yes, the little Kelly needs a blessing because she has more work to do. Luke has more work to do, so they cannot die, and they will be healed. So he gives them both a blessing. And then we go back to Azada, who's waiting around this dark apartment, not sure what to do. She's running out of food. She's running out of water. She hears mobs outside that are not very pleasant to be around. And then she's sleeping, and she hears her father calling her name, Azada, Azada, and knocking on the door. And then she comes to wake up, and it's Mary outside the door. And at this point, you've been jerked around so much in the story that you're like, is it really Mary, or is it somebody else who's maybe not so kind? But it is Mary. And she's like, we made it back, and Kelly is walking. And then Sam comes into view and he's like, "You remember me, Azada?" And she's like, "Yes, I remember you." And not just from when he saved her outside of her father's village or outside of Karamshar, but also she remembered his spirit from the premortal existence. So, there's more to come. 2 more books in the series. And this is my second time reading the series through, so I don't remember too much about what happens. But at this point in time, Sarah, Em, and Luke, Mary, Azada, Kelly Beth, and Sam are all together. General Brighton is passed away. Bono, we don't know if he got to his family or not. The United States is pretty much shut down on Aurora, but the old man who's been influencing the king site, who's basically putting this whole plan in motion, he's telling him that, yeah, America's down now, but they will bounce back, and he's got to be prepared for that. And he's like, no, they're down. And so he tells them at the very end of this book, remember when I promised you when we first met several years ago, so many years ago? He's like, yeah, you promised me power and money and everything. He's like, yeah, I promised you everything. What I didn't, you know what I also promised you? I promised you the truth. And the truth is, all of it was a lie. You're not getting any of this. They will win. We will do all this and they will still win. So, 2 more books.